Hey, everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 200 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today, again, obviously no background music for you guys. No cool intro, no cool beat. I have the new theme ready to go. Kind of ready to go. Technically, it's saved on my broken computer, and we'll have to figure that out when it's time to. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But for right now, we're just releasing solo episodes, and we are just releasing them basically as is with no editing. I pretty much hit record. And I talked to you guys. And so that's allowed these episodes to be just a little more raw. I guess a week ago, last Thursday in episode 199, I talked about probably 3 or 4 different things that I don't talk about on the show. And I just thought it would be fun. I figured you guys have been around long enough. You kind of know who I am at this point. And yeah, I thought it would be fun. And so today's episode, 1,270 days later, do I still suck at jiu-jitsu? And so last week, if you guys didn't tune in, what we did was we pretty much did a glossary of all of my favorite picks of the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show from episode 1 all the way down. I kind of go through these different stages of life that I was even in and how a lot of these interviews affected me. And so we will kind of play on that a little more. But I don't consider these 2-part episodes. If you didn't want to listen to the glossary episode, don't listen to it. You will be totally fine digging in to this episode. But a good place to start. And like I said, obviously there's no intro, outro. We're pretty much just talking. The whole format of the podcast is ruined on episode 200. But we'll be back probably on episode 202. I'm thinking episode 202 will be an interview. So next Tuesday, we won't have anything. We'll have a regular 201 will be a regular solo episode on Thursday, as per usual. And my new computer should be in, and we should have enough time to edit an interview for you guys. Actually, I have one. It's just unedited. And so, yeah, I should be able to release that to you guys very soon. Anyway, the context, the basis of this episode is that I have been doing the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show for 4 years now, or a little over 4 years. And in that, or a little less than 4 years. And in that time, we've done 200 episodes. We have, if you really look back and you, for whatever reason, saw, oh, I really like how Josh McKinney's teaching. I really like the stuff that he's showing now. What I have, in my opinion, that separates me from every other content creator right now in the jiu-jitsu space that is trying to create content for jiu-jitsu progression is the podcast walks you through my journey. And it's not like I'm saying, hey, let me look back 5 years ago. This is what it used to be like. A lot of the time on the podcast, I am dealing with stuff throughout the week and then talking to you guys about it that next week on the podcast, and maybe where I ended up and how I think about this idea now. I pointed out to you guys last week there were like 4 or 5 episodes clustered within 3 or 4 months, and they were all about how to lose, how to grow from losing, why that idea that either you win or you learn isn't true, because a lot of people don't learn from losses. But I have all these episodes, and they're all in the same little couple month span. What do you think was happening to me during those couple months? I wasn't winning and going, man, all these guys that I'm thrashing, they could really use a podcast episode about how to lose better. No, that is not what was happening. I was losing, and I was losing a lot. And that is really where this show starts. And so to a lot of people that say, oh, Josh, you beat everybody. Like when you go and grapple at a gym, I've seen it. I've watched your seminars. I've gone and I've watched you grapple everybody. And it's pretty insane. Why name the show the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show? Why have on your back a huge patch that says I suck at jiu-jitsu? Well, one, the name of the show is good. The show's got a good title, guys. So you gotta give me that. 2 is I'm not what I consider my potential in jiu-jitsu. Ideally, I would like to think that I'm not even close. And I know that that sounds crazy from a guy who has been training for 15 years. But when I look at jiu-jitsu now versus when I got my black belt 5 years ago, and that was really, I didn't want to do any type of, jiu-jitsu content creation until I was a black belt. It was just my preference. I didn't want to do it. Now I'm encouraging blue belts, purple belts all the time. Hey, you should be creating content right now. This matters so much for your future. I see it now because of the opportunities that I've gotten over the last 200 episodes that I absolutely wouldn't have gotten if it wasn't for the podcast. And so, we just kind of wanted to look at it from the beginning. Have I gotten better over the last 4 years? I got a really great test. I got to compete at Worlds last weekend. How did I do? Did I win? Am I a world champion? No, I'm not. I still suck at jiu-jitsu. Spoiler alert. But that's because that's the attitude. I could easily. I always, again, I talked about this stuff on episode 199. I never, ever on the show talk about my skill level in jiu-jitsu. I just don't. It seems weird. Most people, content creators, love to talk about how great they are. I just don't like to do it. It feels uncomfortable to me. But in these episodes, being raw, being unedited, I will let you guys on a secret. I am crazy good at jiu-jitsu. And I know that I never say anything like that on the show. You're like, whoa, that's a little off for Josh to say. I'm just letting you guys know, though I do suck. Also, you put me in 99.9% of the rooms on the planet in the jiu-jitsu space. And I would bet that I'm not getting scored on in 99.9% of those spaces. And this is from context of years of doing this, of going and traveling and competing and training all these different places. But what I'm chasing is adult black belt. And that is what I really want to explain to you guys in the first part of this episode before we start to get in, is the level of jiu-jitsu that is out there. Because there are some gyms in that 0.1% that I bet you that they have multiple guys that I couldn't score on round after round. There is a level of jiu-jitsu that is, and it's tied into physicality, it's tied into strategy, it's tied into all those other things we talked about. But to a point, when it comes to competition, when it comes to just seeing who is a better grappler, you can split hairs and say, well, I'm more technical than this guy. He's just stronger. He's just more athletic. He's just this. He's just that. But jiu-jitsu is physical. And so we always reference that Captain Jack Sparrow quote where he hits Orlando Bloom with the, what is that called? The sail. And while he's hanging there, he says, let me explain to you the rules of a fight. The only two rules that matter are what a man can do and what a man can't do. And when we separate, oh, this guy's just bigger and that's why he beat me. Well, I'm ignoring that he can do that and I can't. But what can I do to fill this role? What can I do to beat this guy? Right. And so, like I said, there are places that I don't stack up, and I am 100% sure of that too. So my journey on this podcast has been just to get here to where I can go, I think I can compete with these guys. I'm not to where I'm beating these guys. I'm working on it. I'm working really hard. I've beaten a lot of really good guys over the last year. Guys that 2 years ago, guys that 1,270 days ago, I wasn't beating and probably wasn't doing very well with it all. And over this time, we have looked at kind of all these different situations, all these different conversations. And I just wanted to share with you guys how they've helped me and how they've changed me. The big thing that we talk about on the show is these situations that you put yourself in, the consistency and the focus that you have on a day-to-day basis. It does not give you a world title. It doesn't. But it makes you a person who is capable of winning a world title. You still have to seize that opportunity. And so, all those lessons that we talk about on the show, what they are little things that I was struggling with and dealing with over time or had dealt with that changed who I was as a person. And so that's what we're going to really kind of look at is, I know this is so funny for this to be the goal of this episode. We're going to look at how important it is to be consistent and to have focus. And so I thought a good place to start before we dig into all these lessons learned and we go back on all these interviews, I thought I would just tell you guys about last week, because something bizarre happened to me last week while competing at the World Championships. It seems like this competition season, I have not competed and not come back with an insane story to tell you guys. Simply for content creation purposes, this the consistency of competition has really been helpful for the podcast. But anyway, I competed at Worlds. Normal stuff, made weight, warmed up well, felt really great in my match. Honestly, big props to my opponent. I really was hitting him with my best offense with reckless abandon, and I was hitting it well. I was deep on certain positions that I win in basically all the time. But like I said, the level of jiu-jitsu out there is insane. This guy was able to absorb some of my best knee cuts, my best upper body positions, and he was able to survive them. There was one point that I had the squeeze on this guy, and he was making noises that sounded pretty rough. And not only that, but I was putting so much squeeze on him that I could hear myself going and squeezing this dude as hard as I could. And he absorbed it. He ate it. Yeah, it was pretty insane. I thought the match was close. I thought that maybe I would have scored it differently, but luckily for you guys and all of us, I'm not a referee. And so I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I don't know. I just thought I did really well. It was definitely not a performance that makes me discouraged. It was a performance that makes me go, dude, not only could I beat this guy, but I could have beat this guy that day. It was like a few little things, and I really brought a certain amount of heat that I haven't been able to bring, and I brought it this year. And so I really made some big changes in my jiu-jitsu, but I still lost. But something interesting happens. There's this point, 30 seconds left in the match. I look up and I'm just scored 2, and I didn't know what the score was. And I thought that now it was going to be tied. I thought that it was 2 points in an advantage, and I thought that I had an advantage already, which I did. And I just swept the guy and I scored 2. So in my mind, it is tied, and now we're about to fight to see who wins this ref's decision. And we're 30 seconds left. I look up and I see Richie, who was coaching me. He's one of my purple belts. And he was, yelling for a certain guard pass. But then next to him is a suited up Jake Watson, which was kind of weird. What is this guy doing here? I've heard a voice yelling to me at certain times that I didn't recognize in this match. Didn't even realize, didn't even think about it. But it was Jake. And so they're both yelling. I've got one more shot. Again, I thought I was close. I thought I might have done enough to steal that other advantage, because this guy ended up having 2 advantages and not 1. But I wasn't, and I ended up losing. And it's just one of those things, you win, you lose. I really didn't even feel very discouraged for how hard I've worked for Worlds, for how much I focused on it, how hard the diet was, how hard everything was, or the training has been. I really didn't care that I lost. And the reason is because I knew at the end of that match that I had performed to the best of my ability. I was defending stuff that I never can defend, and I was beating stuff that I can never beat, and I was getting to my best stuff. This guy was just good. He just beat me, man. But it was, to me, I go, yeah, that was all I had. I gave him everything I had. If the match would have went another minute, I would have had more. But in 10 minutes, I gave him every bit that I could, and this dude absorbed it. So I go and I collapse on the side as per usual. And I'm scorched, and everyone's giving me the fist bump. The dude, that was a great fight. It happens, right? This is it. It be like that. And so what ends up happening is Jake gives me a fist bump, and Jake's doing commentary that day. That's why he is suited up. And he says, we were just talking about, hey, Jake, how are you doing, man? Doing good. I'm literally 30 seconds off the mat at this point. I am scorched. I am sweat. I'm like still in the middle of starting to sweat a lot. My body's catching up to how exhausted I am. And I make a joke to Jake. I go, hey, bro, if you need any help with commentary this weekend, my weekend just opened up. And he goes, yeah. Do you think you could go in 5 minutes? And I was like, what do you mean? I was just joking, Jake. I'm just coming off the mat trying to look at the bright side of things. And he's like, let me go get approval, and I'll have you on the mic. I'll meet you up there. And so I'm like, I've got producer Bryce there with me, who sees this situation. He sees the value of it. And he's like, oh gosh, we could go do something here. Let's get on. Let's go. He's got my backpack. We run up the stairs. I'm still geared up. By the time I get to the top of the stairs, Jake says, hey, you're on. We're on in 2 minutes, dude. And I'm like, okay. I'm wearing a gi. I take my gi top off. I throw a t-shirt on. I didn't even have time to go into the bathroom and change. I'm changing by the announce table. Throw on the headset. I am still out of breath when we go live. They prep me for 30 seconds into the headset. They say, hey, Josh, we're trusting Jake that you're somebody relevant. You got approval. You have 200 episodes of a podcast. That must mean that you know what you're doing. That must mean you're a professional jiu-jitsu commentator. I've never commentated on anything in my life. Yes, I do a podcast. Yes, I've emceed all kinds of different events, but commentating jiu-jitsu is different. It is something I have absolutely never done before. And not only that, of course, we always watch jiu-jitsu events and go, yeah, commentary. I could do this. And you pretend in your head, oh, I would have said that or I would have said this. But I've never listened to jiu-jitsu commentary in a sense of, oh, I enjoy this or I don't, or other than in a sense of I enjoy this or I don't. I always am either thinking, oh, this is good, this is bad. That's all I think about it. I don't think about, I love how Sean Williams is explaining this. When I commentate, when I get the chance at Worlds to commentate seconds after losing, that's what I'm going to do. No preparation. And keep in mind, I do study jiu-jitsu, but I study like 4 people. I only study people whose jiu-jitsu I really enjoy. And now I have to commentate and talk about all these athletes that I purposely do not watch ever. But it be like that sometimes. And that is kind of my example to consistency and focus. And what ends up happening, and I don't have any videos to share with you guys that I know of right now. If I do find one of the ones that I commentated on and they have it on Flow or they have it on YouTube and I can share it, I absolutely will. I will send it to you guys on the Gi Gazette. If you're not part of the Gi Gazette, I'll hit you with a commercial right now. Sign up for the 3 Lenses ebook. The 3 Lenses is the last ebook I wrote, and it is built around why training method. Designated winner is the how training method, right? But the 3 Lenses is the why. Why do you need training method, and why do these specific training methods work better for specific people? And so if you liked episodes 196, 198, where I really broke down, I dug deep on the history of training method and the future of training method, you should get this free ebook. simplifyingjujitsu.com/3. I'll make sure to link it in the description. I've never done a I've never done an audio version of it, but I know that more people would sign up if I did. So maybe in the 200s, I'll get an audio version, an audiobook version of the 3 lenses, and we can go through that. But let's get back into the episode. So what I kind of wanted to look at, we talked about that idea of you change, you become a different person. Okay. Let me put this into context for you guys. The last time that I was at the pyramid for the world championships, I was a brown belt. So this might have been 6 years ago. The last time that I was at the world championships and I was a brown belt, me and my dad went, and I think I won 2, lost in the placing round, had a great performance at brown belt. But here's what I did. I did what everybody does. And I woke up on black belt day. Me and my dad got there as early. We got there at like 8:30. And the tournament doesn't start till 9:30. And we got like first row seats. And in our minds, it might have been second or third row because then you can see over the barricade. But in our minds, we had secured the best seats in the house. Fast forward 6 years, 4 years of putting in work on a podcast, 6 years of competing, 6 years of trying to make a name for myself, of trying to brand myself, of trying to grow all this BS that we're always messing with on the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show. 6 years later, I show up to watch the Worlds on black belt day. I'm competing and I lose. And at 1:30 p.m., when all the good seats are taken, somebody called me up and said, hey, you want to sit 30 rows back from where you and your dad sat 6 years ago in the actual best seat in the house, in the only ergonomically designed swivel chair in the building? Throw the headset on and discuss the biggest moments in gi jiu-jitsu for 2023. Literally, I got to commentate on one of the most controversial matches. For me, the only highly controversial match that I've really seen a lot of posts about from Worlds. And there's a lot of controversy. There's always going to be controversy. I know I told you guys I thought that maybe my match should have been scored a little bit differently. But the truth is, the IBJJF refs are so much better than any other group of refs. They really are. The rules are so much more intricate. And a lot of times, these big controversial calls are actually the ref making the right call. It's just people hate the rule. And so, yes, I think that rules could be changed. But as long as we have in jiu-jitsu a system that is consistent, I don't care if I lose a match by ... as long as I know that that is how you lose the match. Or win by this, as long as I know that that's how you win. And I think that's the most frustrating thing in any rule set, that it just doesn't seem to fix. Nowhere seems to be consistent, especially when it comes to points, especially when it comes to scoring, things like that. And yeah, that doesn't matter. But I got to commentate on these controversial matches, and I just got to share some of my jiu-jitsu while on there, because keep in mind, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I don't know these athletes. I can't tell you, oh, this guy likes to play video games in the summertime. I don't know. I don't know anything about this guy. All I can tell you is what I'm seeing at that point. And that's all I did when it came to commentary. And what was really cool is I probably had, I would say, 5 or 6 different, and I only got to commentate for an hour and a half. It was supposed to be 10 minutes. And it just kept going and going and going. There came a point where like Bryce and Alex, 2 of my guys, came up, and Bryce being, the most hated person on the podcast. Alex, when he moves back to St. Louis, trust me, he'll be even more hated than Bryce. But anyway, those guys come up to me and like, hey, are we going to eat ever? Or is this just your new job? And I'm like, dude, I think I actually told them, I go, I assume I have about 10 to 15 minutes of fame left. And so let me just ride this out, and then we'll go get food. And they're like, all right, sounds great. Perfect. And, I did. I had like 10 or 15 more minutes left. And I got to spend a ton of time on the mic. And I had all these text messages from people like, is this you commentating on flow? And then it would be like 10 minutes later, because I'm not really checking my phone because I'm in the moment. And then the next one would be like, oh my gosh, this is you. How are you here? And then like 10, 15 minutes later, be like, hey, I actually like your commentary. You're doing a really good job. And what was great is all of those people thought that they just missed me announcing to everybody that I was going to be doing flow coverage this weekend. I wasn't. It was random. I saw an opportunity and I took it. But here's the thing. Imagine if I am not the person that I am. Imagine if I don't have the 200 episodes of consistent podcasting under me, where one, I really learned how to explain jiu-jitsu to the common man. That's a skill that I've developed. But not only that, what do you think the sell was to get these guys on flow who don't know who I am? When my boy Jake Watson comes in, hey, my buddy wants to be on the broadcast. Do you think he said that? No. He's like, hey, my buddy, huge podcaster. He wants to be on this. He wants to be on the broadcast. We need somebody. Is he in? Oh, yeah, definitely. Get him on. Right? That consistency, maybe it created the opportunity. I don't know. But it definitely allowed me to seize the opportunity in a way that I wouldn't have gotten to if I quit doing the podcast in episode 30, when I wanted to freaking quit doing the podcast, when I was like, this is stupid. I shouldn't do this anymore. But that consistency has compounded and has given other opportunity. And that opportunity is only seized because I have gotten to become a different person, because you guys listen to the podcast. If it wasn't for you guys listening to the podcast, I wouldn't have gotten the practice to get to jump on that. But it's a really long part of that story. Let's get into, I kind of want to deconstruct this entire story that I just told you guys. And that is not that I haven't been this whole time, but there are certain interviews that I have gotten to do. And I have 5 interviews. And I just wanted to touch on them. And I even touched on them in the last episode, but I wanted to touch on them and give some specific lessons that I've learned and how much they have helped me. So first one I wanted to touch on is our Huron Gracie interview. And I will link every one of these interviews in the description of this episode. So the Huron Gracie interview, where who knows what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about training methods, something like that. And Huron wanted to talk about being present. And so we talked about being present. And what was really interesting, because this interview is in the height of COVID, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in. I'm actually at the time I am at some of my family members have a beach house, and we're all staying with them illegally, I'm sure. But we're all staying with them, and we're just kind of keeping our family together, which was really nice. But I was able to do some interviews, and I did this Huron Gracie interview. And something we talked about was the importance of being in the moment. And just for COVID itself, that was like 2 years where a lot of us, our lives were greatly affected by this sickness, even if we didn't have it. And over this, or 18 months or whatever. And over this time, I thought back to that interview so many times of, I know this sucks. I know that, me and Emily are both at this one point sick. And we can't do anything, and it sucks and it's frustrating. We just want to get back to work in 2 weeks. And so often your mindset says 2 weeks, then you'll be happy. And then 2 weeks come around. Oh, you still hate your job? You still don't like to wake up early in the morning? You still hate this? And then you go, well, then, in a year, I'm going to have a new job, and then I'll be happy. And then you wait that year, and then you keep doing this the rest of your life. And you never enjoyed the moment. You never were present. And that's why people love jiu-jitsu so much, is because it's very hard to not be present when you're fighting somebody. It's very hard to worry about dinner that night when, the explanation I love to give is, imagine you have a guy that's 280 pounds and he's dedicated his entire life through middle school, high school, when he was 5 years old, into college. He has dedicated his entire life to putting people on their back and keeping them there because he's wrestled his whole life. And now you are underneath this 280-pound man that had maybe a bad day. And he is putting pressure on you through your body into the floor. There is going to be a permanent indent of where you died on the mat that day, most likely. But you're not worried about anything else. You are only worried about the pressure that this guy is giving you. That's being present. I know that's an extreme example. That's why people love jiu-jitsu, is because you're so engaged. You cannot have your mind on other things. And what I found with this idea of being present, which I really don't think I ever even thought of as important until this Huron Gracie interview. And I'm sure I was present a lot of the time, but I didn't notice it. Now I realize being present, it affects me so much in jiu-jitsu competition too. For example, I'm getting ready for Worlds. I'm dieting for Worlds. It's such this big battle for me. I watch my guy that I have first round, all these other things, and I literally don't start thinking about the actual match, the actual tournament until a day before. Yes, I did all my visualizing weeks out, and I visualize and everything positive as we talk about. I told you guys that little bit that Jared Weiner had shared with me. It's just that like repeating everything positive in your mind. And during that, I stayed positive. But then about 24 hours out, when I ate my last meal before I'm going to compete, so I can, eat a little, make weight, I eat. That's when I started to actually think about the tournament. And then I didn't even start to get ready to compete until it was time to get ready to compete. I wasn't putting myself in the mindset of I'm a killer until 2 hours out, because 2 hours out when I'm warming up, then I can be in this mindset. And that is this other side of the coin of being present to me, is saying, I can't control what happens on Saturday. I have allowed myself, I have done all the work to become the best grappler that I can be for Saturday. So from here on out, I need to rest. I'm going to rest my mind. I'm going to rest my body. And then 2 hours before, when it's time to warm up, I'm going to say, all right, let's turn back on, because the jiu-jitsu's there in you. You have changed as a person, but you wait for that moment to come. Yes, my wife and I have this baby on the way, and we are so prepared. This beautiful baby boy. We're so prepared. We're always thinking about it. We're always prepared. But the truth is, we do not know what to expect until the moment arrives. It could be totally different than what we expected. And so we can plan to have all these certain things and all these certain things we're going to do with our son and all these certain things that we won't do with our son, and have this plan. But until we get into the moment, we don't know. So it is better to focus on making yourself ready for that moment. That's what we're doing when we're training jiu-jitsu for a competition, is we are training for one moment. We're not training to be able to kill everybody all the time, no matter what. We're training for one moment, one rule set, a couple matches that day. And just having the faith in yourself and having the faith in your jiu-jitsu to not be nervous that last week where you're not training as much, where you taper your training down, and just saying, when I get there, the jiu-jitsu is going to be there. Because when I show up to class, it's there, and I don't have to will it there. It's there. I warm up, I get ready, and I compete. And so that is big lesson on presence. I did talk quite a bit about the Kenny Florian episode, and just talking about those ideas that shaped me, that kind of shaped a lot of the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show ideas, gave me some more context. Something that Kenny was really willing to do in the interview is talk about jiu-jitsu in a way and discuss it in a way that other people up until that point in the podcast hadn't really seemed to do to me, and to take parts of it as art and parts of it as science, and kind of combine those two things together to really make it easy for me, the common man, to understand what he was talking about. And that is really, I think, why people like the podcast, is because we do that so much at this point. Most of what we're doing is discussing these ideas and going, hey, here's a simpler way to think about this. And we've thought about this a lot, but here's an even simpler way. Next one. And these are, again, the being present and the Eric Hebner. He has 2 episodes, and we pretty much talk about mindset and competition, both episodes. And to me, not only is he my wrestling coach, but he really has always been a mindset coach for me. He has helped me so much, just conceptualizing how I can consistently perform. And that's something I'm really proud of myself this year. Even though I haven't won every match, won some great matches, lost a lot of matches, or lost a few. I think I've lost 3 this year. But in all 3, I 100% can tell you I performed in all 3. And I've never been able to say that with matches that I've lost. Generally, matches that I lose, I would go, I just didn't feel like myself. And I know we all deal with that. It's taken me 15 freaking years to figure that out. So if it's taken you months, don't get stressed about it. Keep competing. Listen to Eric Hebner, and he'll give you some really great advice on it, on those 2 episodes. And he will be back on the show very soon. Chris Payne's another one that I did talk about last episode, but just, again, the idea of conceptual teaching. Chris has been on the show a lot. The last shout out to give is definitely Mark Vives competing like an NFL player. I actually have the pleasure of, dude, I'm so excited about this weekend. If you guys didn't sign up, I believe you missed out. I don't think there's any way you can sign up. You can go suck eggs. That's your fault. But me, Nick Sanders, Mark Vives are teaching a 3-day jiu-jitsu camp in Wisconsin at Stronghold Jiu-Jitsu. And it's this weekend. So if you were listening to this right when it came out, it would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And shout out to the Stronghold BJJ podcast. They really, Wade has been consistent on it, man. It's really gotten better. I've been on it a few times, and I will even note that I think that Wade, the last time I was on, asked me better questions than maybe I've been asked on a podcast. And I've been on a lot of podcasts. It's just he knew my talking points. And so he could say, hey, you always say this, but none of us understand what the heck you're talking about, Josh. Explain it to us differently. And great episode. But anyway, getting to sit down with those guys, getting to sit down with Mark last year at the camp for 3 days straight. And then a few months later, I went and visited him for a week in Chicago. Those 8 days that I got to spend with Mark, learning just hitting him with question after question after question, it made me so much better of a competitor. And the big takeaways, and I've told you guys this before, was this idea of, in competition season, you train and you compete like an NFL player, because that's one of the few sports that we have that has had billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars put into it and into researching it. And it's had hundreds of years of public eyes, or 100 years. I don't know how long football has been around. Could have been around. It could have been made in 1990 and I wouldn't have known. It's always something weird to think about, that like, you don't know if anything actually existed before you were born. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, this episode's getting weird. Whoa, I didn't mean for it to take that turn. But just this idea that NFL players compete once a week, their games have so much value. If I try to treat my jiu-jitsu schedule like a MLB baseball player, they play 162 games a year. They are practicing and then playing at night. We don't do that in jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is too physically demanding to do that. You would probably die. But we do these times. I think I've competed like 7 or 8 times in the last 3 months. That's like NFL schedule wise, right? You were competing a ton in that time, and then it finishes with Worlds. And what's interesting is, just like in football, one and done is the name of the game. And so when it came to competition, looking at how these guys lift, when they do sprints, why they do sprints. Obviously, we're not sprinting in jiu-jitsu, but still, for the idea of cardio, we've gotten a lot of benefit out of sprints. I have an episode coming to you guys soon. Again, we don't have interviews right now, but we will be back to them every single week. Once we start again, I assume we will never stop doing Tuesday interviews. Every single Tuesday will be a new interview. But here's the thing. I've got a really good one for you guys coming up. Me and my dad we're putting together we basically done an 18-month case study with me, and I think it's 3 other people, but it might even be a few others. Just those 3 other people are in my group. Justin, who you mentioned, JD, who you guys met a few weeks ago. Justin Kitchler is part of that group. We talked a little bit about that in our episode. JD, who you didn't get to hear about in the Justin episode, because I had to cut out what Justin said about JD because it's Justin and then Richie, who I was saying was coaching me at the tournament. The 4 of us have really been consistent on a 1 day a week lift, 1 day a week sprints cardio. And the results that we have to share with you are stupid. They will blow your mind. And that is we'll get into that pretty soon. Those are the interviews I wanted to tell you guys about. Let's just look at the last little part of this episode. And I know I've been going for a while, but shoot, it's episode 200 and it's my show. I'll do what I want. So I kind of touched on this idea of the value of conversations with fellow jiu-jitsu practitioners. All those people that I named, those are all people that coach me and help me. And if I treated jiu-jitsu like most people do, in this matter-of-fact, idiotic, small-minded way of this guy disagrees with one thought that I have, and so he's wrong. Or I can beat this guy, and so he's wrong. Yes, of course, when it comes to technical stuff, if I pass your guard with something and then you try to correct how I passed your guard, you're going to annoy me, and I'm going to pass your guard thousands of times and try to kill you. But most of the time, that's not what it is. Most of the time, guys will get their purple belts and they'll start to beat their coach. And they'll be like, well, that means that I'm better than my coach now. And I know more than my coach now. And that is not the way to look at it. You're 20 years younger than your coach. You're 15 years younger. You're bigger. You're stronger. You're more athletic. None of that stuff matters. You beating your coach should be this huge check mark for you. But what you should understand it as is now I'm finally understanding the perspective of jiu-jitsu that my coach has been trying to show to me. That's it. There are so many more perspectives of jiu-jitsu out there. There's so many more ways to look at it, so many more ways to think about grappling. And I just think I wanted to make sure to talk about this in this episode because I did the episode, I think it was 49 and a half. It was a Suckless Saturday, biggest problem facing jiu-jitsu. And I told you guys about this last week. We did this episode and it was all about the problems of training method. And then fast forward 150 episodes later, and I get to release episodes 196, 198, all about my findings and my studies of training method. And again, people will credit me for inventing designated winner. Really, all it was I put a name on something that a lot of places did kind of. And I made it an easier description and I made it simpler for people to be able to do it themselves. But this is what these high-level guys are doing. And to me, designated winner was the answer to that problem, the biggest problem facing jiu-jitsu in episode 50. Now, to me, there is a new problem facing jiu-jitsu, and it's been around, but it to me has gotten worse and worse and worse. And it is the coach and student relationship. The coach and student relationship is an absolute mess. And that's what I'm going to dedicate the next 100 episodes to actually solving. Of course, we're going to be doing normal ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show stuff. It's going to be training methods. It's going to be understanding. It's going to be all those things. But my next deep dive is going to be coach and student, meaning I'm going to interview some of my favorite coach-student duos. We talked about, not even just with jiu-jitsu. We talked about having Mop on again with his student, Sean Woodson, who's in the UFC. We'll do a lot of episodes like that. But what I really want to get to is that relationship, because that relationship is terrible in so many places for so many people. And I can explain exactly why in like 2 or 3 minutes. So most jiu-jitsu student relationships go like this. You start as a white belt, you stay there 6, 7 years, you become good, you're a purple belt, you're a brown belt. And at no point has there ever been any communication ever other than learning jiu-jitsu technique or learning jiu-jitsu. And maybe your coach is good and he's really taught you how to do jiu-jitsu well. And then what starts to happen is you start to think things, maybe even you get asked to teach classes. And so, or to teach kids classes or teach whatever. And so then there's kind of like a business into this. Maybe you're getting free membership, maybe you're getting paid, whatever. And then from there, neither person has any other communication at all until there is a boiled over problem. This is how the problem goes. Hey, you started me teaching classes when you had 50 students. Now we're at 150 students. Now we're 300 students. I feel like I built this place and I'm still only getting free membership. Okay. The other side of the coin is the coach's perspective. Hey, you have been teaching for me and you've been getting paid what we agreed. And now all of a sudden you say you deserve ownership in the gym that I invested and I took the risk out on and you didn't. So you have two sides of this coin. That is where so much problems come. Of course, there are other schools where these other problems come in where, the coach is trying to sleep with your wife or something like that. Yeah, that's not a conversational thing. You should just leave. But most of the time, if people were just up front and the coach would tell the student, hey, my goal is to get this place to 300 students. And maybe the student says, I could help you do that. And they think a little bit ahead and they say, you know what? What if when we get to 300 students, I work with you, I do this just for free membership for right now, but then maybe I get 10% ownership in the business. And maybe you guys have a contract for it. Literally that would solve most of the big breakups in jiu-jitsu that I see. Just that discussion. Coach, this is what I'm wanting to get out of jiu-jitsu. Do you hope to help me get there? Because so often it's like the coach doesn't even know. The coach has 300 students. You're one of the coaches. He's probably less focused on you and more focused on the 299 students. And again, this is just, I don't think that one person or the other is right or wrong in this problem facing jiu-jitsu, but it's common. And I see it so often. And I even would say that I am used in some of the arguments, and that should not be. Meaning, Josh McKinney, who knows more than you, says this. He says that I should take my jiu-jitsu career this way, and you say I should do this. You're wrong. He's right. It ain't like that, dude. It's going to be dependent on you. You should probably hear 10 more perspectives. It shouldn't just be me versus your coach. And a lot of times your coach has so much more context to your actual situation. And they're not only seeing you, but they're seeing you as how someone else sees you and not how you see yourself. And so maybe all that positive self-talk that you're pushing and you're doing, maybe it's BS. Maybe it's not really working. And your coach sees that. And so he's telling you, hey, I think you should focus on coaching and not competing. But Josh says to chase your dreams and be a competitor. Maybe you suck. Maybe you shouldn't be a competitor. I just think that, and again, I don't have an answer for this right now. That's why I said I'm going to dedicate the next bit of time. And I really had this conversation with one of my coaches, the head of my affiliation, Jared. And we just talked about, I can look at things from a different perspective than most other 29-year-old people that do jiu-jitsu, because I have had students under me since I was 21. And I've had, a good group. I have students that have stayed with me since I was 21. And, you invest time in them, but they invest time in you, and they invest time in the gym, and they invest money into the gym. And for me, that's like the biggest thing that I focus on. And I'm sure that I fall short on it a lot still. But like my upper belts, I don't think that they're going to be here forever in my space. Doesn't make sense for them to. If I taught them great jiu-jitsu and they've dedicated the amount of time that they've dedicated, I think that they should run their own school. Or they should be brought in by somebody because they have this ability to teach jiu-jitsu at a high level. Not a lot of people have that. And so as guys got good at blue and purple belt, that became my next focus for them is, okay, you're good, but that doesn't translate into anything in the jiu-jitsu space besides you winning rounds and winning matches. Those things do not translate into anything. But if you're good and you can teach, that could translate into a lot. If you're good and you can explain, that could translate into a lot. If you're good and you can innovate, that can translate into a lot. And so just kind of in that same idea of coaching and student, I think a big reason that we're dealing with this is because so many people think the only way that you can make a living in jiu-jitsu is by owning a school. To me, that's just not true. I just don't think that that is the truth. The reason I say this is, say you own a big jiu-jitsu school and you're worried about somebody else opening another school. Like, oh man, one of my students opens, I'm going to lose everybody. Most of the time, it doesn't work like that at all. Most of the time, they have to go and struggle on their own for a while. But here's the thing. You can't have like, okay, I live in Granite City, Illinois. There's like 15,000 people in our town. For me to have 300 students, that's 2% of my town training jiu-jitsu. That's an insane number to own a business and go, I need 2% of the people in this city to pay me monthly. That's crazy. Imagine if 2 more people open in Granite City. There was a point not long ago where there were 2 other gyms in Granite City. They both closed down. Just not enough people. We're all trying to draw from this 15,000 person market. Now, here is my sale for you guys on what I understand right now to be the simplest way to maybe put a Band-Aid on this problem. One is to communicate with your coach, communicate with your best students. Where are you guys trying to get to? Can we get there together? Can we both tweak where we're trying to get to end up together, to work together, for the, what is it? The sum to be greater than you guys know what I'm talking about. If you add us together, we're better than us individually. You guys know what the heck I'm talking about. But it's this idea of, the other idea besides conversations, I think, is content creation. I think you look at some of the things that I have had to conceptualize on the podcast, like the blitz. People use that term in jiu-jitsu so much in like my jiu-jitsu space, and people use it to me as in, yeah, Josh, you made up that term. I did not make up the term blitz. I just explained it to you guys. Just one of the first people to sit you down and say, this is what high-level guys are doing. But people are using that term a lot, right? And you go, and again, I didn't invent that term, just brought it to light for some of you. But to illustrate that is like the power of conceptualizing, and why content creation has more value than just you selling DVDs. So often content creation is like, it makes you have to be better. Because if I am worried, I wouldn't have a awesome recording studio right now if I wasn't creating content. There would be no reason. Before I was creating content, when I built a recording studio, it sucked because I didn't know what I was doing. So when it comes to content creation, I just think that is one of the next spaces to really focus on in jiu-jitsu. I'm seeing guys that aren't great at jiu-jitsu that I know just people in my city, a lot of people in my city that are probably better on the mat than these guys. But these guys are making a living. They are paying their rent, they're paying their mortgage, they're paying for their stuff through jiu-jitsu. And I know you say, oh, but I can't create content. I don't understand this stuff. I don't know how it works. My first episode of the ISAJJ Jiu-Jitsu show was me downloading a free app. It was called Anchor at the time. Now it's called Spotify for podcasters. I downloaded it. I recorded directly into my phone, no microphone, nothing, in my bedroom. And I recorded a 15-minute episode. And for the first 2 years of the podcast, it was my most listened to episode, even after I bought a mic, even after all that other stuff. but this is kind of my other sale that I've been hitting people with when it comes to why you should be a content creator, is because if we are professors, if that's true, and again, if you call me professor at something, I'm going to make fun of you. But if that's what we are and that's what we should be called, content creation right now is the only way to get our research funded. I know how to teach these ideas of passing with distance that people love. I only know how to teach them because I was consuming content from my friends and I was creating content and trying to get these things to mesh. And I finally have this way to make sense of all this. And that only happened because my research got funded. I was only able to research in that depth because it got funded. That is, if we're professors, that's what we should be doing. We should be digging deeper. We finally have somebody, you get your black belt, somebody is saying, you are now good enough to maybe innovate. You're now good enough to do research on your own, but you're not going to get that research funded by teaching a class that there are 10 other purple belts at your gym that would teach it for free. That's why your coach does not care about you getting 10% of the gym most of the time, is because that position, that's you learning to teach. But make sure you have an end goal. Make sure you're going, okay, well, I'll start to teach online too. And I'll start to be consistent. I'll start to focus. And my last little bit on content creation before we move on to final thoughts of this episode. And it is this. When you think about, because again, I know people are like, Josh, stop trying to get me to create content. Stop it. I don't want to do it. But when you think about it, if you have the goal of ever making money through jiu-jitsu, think about how many people that you know that you have interactions with in person that you know that create content. Most likely, it's either 0% or it's 1% of the people that you know. If you are in a content creation mecca, maybe 2 or 3% of the people that you know create content. Now, the second question, how many people do you know that consume content? 100% of the people that you know consume content. And so, yeah, maybe not 100% of them are going to listen to your sucky podcast, but maybe 1% are. And that's going to grow. You're going to find the right people as long as you're consistent, as long as you're focused, as long as you keep learning. And always, if you guys do end up starting a podcast specifically, I still do keep my hard rule of, if you have 7 episodes on the podcast, you ask me to be on, I'll be on. I don't think I've said no to a single person. I'm sure if somebody wanted me to be on a communism podcast or something like that, I might say no, but I might say yes. I might come in and be, and be, wearing my American flag t-shirt and come in with the riding a bald eagle and argue with those guys. But anyway, that was so stupid. Let's look at our last point of this episode. And this episode's been forever. Hopefully there were some good stories in this. But kind of the last point is just all those things we talked about back to the first point, which was that initial story. Just all those ideas of being in the moment, all those ideas of content creation, of breakthroughs. I know this episode was going to be whether or not I suck at jiu-jitsu. That's always going to be in the eyes of the beholder. I'll tell you this, if you're the freaking, I don't remember, like 10th or 11th ranked middleweight that I fought at the world's first round this year, you might think I suck. I don't know. But if you're some random blue belt that I'm going to thrash at this Wisconsin camp, you'll probably think I'm really good at jiu-jitsu. So it is in the eyes of the beholder. So the answer is 1,270 days later, do I still suck? It just depends on who you ask, man. And, and you can ask me and it'll depend on which day it is and whether or not I'm telling you whether or not I suck. But anyway, I think that those are the big ideas. Oh yeah. The last little thing. And I even touched on this last week, but think about this. I told you guys that story of Kenny Florian last week, just kind of pouring some positivity into me for no reason, and it being one of the big motivators to why I still do the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, why I never quit doing it. And then I also told how that same thing happened with Danny O'Donnell and Jake Watson. And so just for more context on that, Jake Watson is who I got to commentate with at the World Championships on Saturday. And then on finals day on Sunday, Danny and Jake ended up doing with Kindle Reusing, ended up doing the finals together. And so when you see that, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty nuts that this dude had such an effect on all of us. And so out of all of those things, when you look at the idea of content creation, you could say one sentence that could have this magnificent effect on somebody's life. And whether or not you care about that, who cares? Even from a sense of, for me, there are guys, like I've told you guys how much Chewy has affected me as a podcaster, content creator, all those things. If Chewy releases anything product-wise about content creation, it does not matter if it's a really, really, really high ticket private coaching. It does not matter if it's a low ticket. He created an instructional. I'm buying it because he has said things to me that have changed my life. And when you look at content creation and you look that could be a possibility, we talk about this all the time, like my dad's idea that what breaks your heart is your job to fix. If it breaks your heart that police officers don't do jiu-jitsu because you're a police officer that does jiu-jitsu and you say these guys are not prepared, that breaks your heart. Well, my dad would say it's your job to fix it. One of my students always says, "Man, that's such a pastor answer. That's such a pastor thing to say," which it is. He's a pastor. Sue me. But that is, those are kind of my main thoughts. Is like if you're looking for, okay, Josh, you sold me on content creation. Where do I start? I have a few episodes for you. I'll make sure to throw in the description. I think I have 2 different ones. And man, I think I got through all that I wanted to talk about. I made sure to leave a second. I guess this is where the outro music would start. And we would be just going into the outro. Great episode, Josh. Great stuff. Loved what you talked about. But I just want to take a second. As always, thank you guys. 200 episodes in, and the podcast really is becoming a big part of my life. And it's really producing opportunities that I absolutely would not get if it wasn't for the podcast. And so I just want to make sure that, to thank you guys. I like even things like my computer going down and it not being this stressful thing, because I'm like, hey, one, I'm going to keep doing the podcast, so I got to get a new computer for it. And 2, it's like, wasn't super stressful because of the opportunities that have been created because of the podcast. And so I guess that's kind of where I wanted to leave you guys. This in the next 200 episodes. So in the next year, there are a few things that I plan on getting going. We have multiple instructionals that we're going to start putting out on simplifyingjujitsu.com. And the reason we have not put them out yet is just because we just are now finishing the studio. There's a little sound treating that needs to be done in over the next few days. And then it'll be time to start recording jiu-jitsu content. We have something for weightlifting, for diet, that's coming out for you guys with Steve McKinney. And then by popular demand, I am going to release a designated winner instructional. It's going to have a ton of different designated winner games for you to play. I'm going to also break down how to teach the games. And so, because that's really what's interesting about designated winners. Most of the time you are teaching a game and you are not teaching jiu-jitsu. And then you're allowing them to grapple each other and play the game. And they are learning jiu-jitsu that you didn't really teach. You taught the game. And so I will show how to do that and how to approach basically making your school a designated winner school. And so that is where I will leave you guys. Those things are coming up in the next 100 episodes. Also that will be coming up is the idea of the simplified sessions. We will be doing 1 hour, 90-minute, I guess, free seminars. And I don't even want to use the term seminar because I don't know what these are going to become. Basically, I'm going to get the most qualified black belts in here that I can and say, you have 90 minutes. Make us better at jiu-jitsu. And you guys will be able to interact. It'll be on like Facebook and YouTube Live. So you'll be able to ask questions, comment, all that stuff. Those will be really cool. I'm really excited about that. And I think those are the main things that I have coming that I wanted to drop for you guys at the end of episode 200 and let you guys know about. Thank you guys for checking out the podcast. Always being patient. We won't have an interview until at least episode 202. It might be episode 203. We'll just see how that goes. And once the new computer comes in, how hard it is going to be to switch operating systems. I'm switching from a PC my whole life, buying my first Mac. They just say for video editing that the one that I want is the move. You should get it. And so that's what I'm doing. That's all I have for you guys today, though. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Hope I'll see some of you guys at this Wisconsin camp with my boys, Mark Vives and Nick Sanders. And most of all, I hope today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.